We're going to start off with the maybe biggest failure in this division. Maybe even the entire NFL, if you're one of those people who wants to go through the dramatic landscape of the entire league. And we're speaking of first, the Carolina Panthers. What happened with the Carolina Panthers last year? Well, you guys sucked. Not only did you potentially take the wrong quarterback, not only did you not give him any help on the offensive line, at wide receiver, which is the most important position to give a quarterback help when they are first drafted into the league. And no, Adam Thielen is not the guy to change a young quarterback's life. But also, this is a team whose owner is very new, and he's setting them up to be the Cleveland Browns of the 2020s, whether he is out here bashing the media in weird cocaine-fueled rants, or he's throwing beers at fans in Jacksonville. What did I miss about how much of a mess the Jacksonville Jaguars are going into the 2024 offseason?
Yeah, and the Panthers, we're talking about the Carolina Kitty Cats, a weekly participant in the worst top five, the worst possible place that you could possibly be in the NFL on the Brickyard's worst top five. They were not only weekly participants, but they were the number one worst team in the entire season at large, and for a number of reasons. You alluded to Bryce Young and the struggles that he had, Frank Reek, dare I say.
Frank Reek.
And everybody else that was a part of that team, even Josh McCown, the OC, didn't pan out as well. And they have all these issues, and yet for some reason, here we are now. Can they rebound? We've seen teams go from worst to first, and what are the optimism that we have here if they're able to turn things around with their first round? Oh, wait. Second round pick and further on.
Yeah, because if you remember, they hired Frank Reich last year, and we were like, this isn't just a mistake. This is setting your franchise back for a year. And we said he would not last the full season. If not, he would be a one and done sacrificial lamb of a head coach. And then everyone around the league was telling Ben, don't go there. Bobby, don't go there. Mike Vrabel, you want to turn your career around? Well, you should sit out a year and not go to the Carolina Panthers because of that owner, David Tepper. You traded away your first round pick to the Chicago Bears. They end up getting DJ Moore and finessing you out of a first round pick. But when you are 2-15, there has to be some optimism that, like, if we're so bad, obviously we're not paying anybody, right? So tell me about their salary cap situation, because this should give you optimism, because if you're that bad, there's no way you'd be screwed over in the cap and not be able to rebuild without a first round pick, right?
Right. Well, here we are. I have the salary cap in front of you. I also have players that they could potentially cut based to free up some cap space. So they have $34 million in cap space, and that might sound like a lot, but when you think about a team who has no receivers, no offensive line, and the free agents that we'll go over in a second, you realize that that salary cap can only stretch so thin. The fact that their number one receiver is 34-year-old Adam Thielen and a number of free agents who are soon to be, you realize, oh, wait, maybe it's not going to be very good for these Panthers. So some guys, the top player that they're paying is Taylor Motton.
Who?
Yeah, Taylor Motton, whose salary cap hit is $29 million. If they cut him after June 1st, they'll save $17 million, but have $12 million in dead cap. And if they cut him before, even more dead cap money. Second on that is Dante Jackson, who $15 million. And if they cut him after June 1st, they'll save $10 million in the cap. So overall, not super optimistic cap-wise. Derek Brown, same idea. Austin Corbett and Adam Thielen round up the top five. And then we get into players like Hayden Hurst and things of that nature.
Adam Thielen's really top five, and you're hampered in your cap situation?
Yeah, Adam Thielen, his cap hit is only $9 million.
Yeah.
But they can't cut him because they don't really save much cap there.
You also made last year Miles Sanders the highest paid running back in free agency. He got the most money out of any running back in free agency last year when Josh Jacobs is looking for a new contract. Saquon Barkley is looking for a new contract. Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, the list of running backs that deserve more money goes on. And you are hampered also by Miles Sanders?
Yeah. So, yeah, and you can't even cut him because you'll have $5 million dead cap, and then you only save $2 million. You might as well keep him at that point. But the worst part of it all is this team sucked, and we know that. They had the worst separation of any wide receiver group in the NFL, the most throwaways for Bryce Young in the NFL, and he also took one of the most sacks in NFL history. going up to the likes of David Carr, the guy who was sacked 76 times in a season.
Wow.
I digress. And there are some players who are coming into free agency who they're going to have to make a decision on. For example, Frankie Louvu, linebacker.
Good player.
Will they keep him?
Yeah.
If I'm him, I would say absolutely not. Then we have Brian Burns. Maybe you've heard of him. One of the best edge rushers in the league. Will he stay or will he go?
Free Brian Burns. Hopefully he goes somewhere nice and warm where he can get away from all of the drama from Carolina. Not saying Carolina isn't warm, but when he could go somewhere like, I don't know, Arizona, the Raiders, the Colts have cap space, the Lions have cap space, the Bengals have cap space, the Texans all have cap space. I would rather be on any of those two teams than the Panthers.
And then worst of all, you said how bad their receiver core was. They also have DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault, who are also free agents as well. Not that they really moved the needle much last year, but DJ Chark, we saw how he was in Jacksonville and Detroit, and definitely a fine receiver, definitely a good 3 or 4, but he'll be gone, and Laviska Shenault also will be gone as well. So we have receiver cores who are potentially leaving, Frankie Louvu, also Shaq Griffin will be gone as well, potentially, Brian Burns, but I'm sure all those lovely draft picks for the Bears will pan out for them.
Yeah, so not only do you not have any help on offense, not only was your quarterback sacked more than David Carr, or as much as David Carr, you said?
He didn't get sacked as much as David Carr, but he was sacked one of the most sacked quarterbacks in NFL history to start his rookie career.
Yeah, so not only do you have that, you have Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, the Chuba Missile Crisis, as our friend who does 3 minutes, Chris Berman, calls him. And then you also don't have any receivers, so you have no cap space. You're losing your entire defense because who the fuck wants to be in Carolina? And then also, you don't have any first-round draft picks where you can get the next star wide receiver, but you can probably draft one in the second round. But that's not going to stop Bryce Young from getting his head taken off.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to have to get a second round wide receiver because they don't. Adam Thielen, he had a good season, don't get me wrong, but he needs to be your number 2.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then after that, like, who's going to replace Brian Burns? He's not an easy guy to replace.
No.
Even if you draft somebody, are they going to be able to give the production that Brian Burns has given you the last 4 years? Absolutely not. And then even Frankie Louvu, fine linebacker. Why in hell would he stay in Carolina? They're not going to be able to replace him necessarily either.
Yeah.
The defense takes a step back. If you're the Panthers, would you focus mainly on the offensive side of the ball and then focus on the defense next year? Or would you just go and try to just fill the holes as needed?
Yeah, so if I'm a new young head coach coming in, and they do have a first-year head coach, I believe it's his first time coaching in the NFL as a head coach, coming from Tampa Bay, first off is making sure my quarterback does not get killed. So you're probably going to have to spend every draft pick after that, but get him some help at wide receiver. Adam Thielen actually did really well and a lot better than most people thought he would do in Carolina as the de facto number 1 receiver because they did not have anyone else at wide receiver. So for me, you take a wide receiver in the second round, see if you can trade for someone who's unhappy like a Brandon Ayuk. If T. Higgins, who we'll get to later, doesn't like being franchise tag, trade for someone like him, or if you can scoop up Devontae or Stephon Diggs, but you need to do something to save face with Bryce Young because he was your first overall pick this year. So you have to save that value that you have with him and then restore just some of his confidence. And hopefully he can do semi what Sean McVay did for Jared Goff. And Sean McVay is definitely one of the best coaches, probably top 3 in the league at that position, but just save his confidence. This is like what Jeff Fisher did to Jared Goff in his first year. You mentioned how much David Carr got hit. Like when we're talking about any of the Carr brothers, when it talks to being sacked, that's a major problem. So your biggest opportunity and your biggest focus has to be Bryce Young. How do we make his life easier?
Yeah, and you make your life a hell of a lot easier if you're not going to get someone like Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors. Those guys are easily going to be gone by then. But second round wide receiver, go after him. I know it's a pretty good tight end draft as well, so maybe you get a tight end. Hayden Hurst is a fine tight end, but he's not moving the needle for you much. Maybe you can find maybe a running back later in the draft. If you can spare and maybe trade Miles Sanders for maybe like a 5th or 6th round pick, maybe you consider that as well.
Yeah.
But if I'm them, you have Dave Canales. He's an offensive minded head coach. He did good for the Buccaneers this year with Baker Mayfield resurrecting his career. And, they ran a pretty efficient offense considering, their offensive line struggles to start. Rashid White, he played better down the stretch. Obviously, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were already established, K. Dot and whatnot. So I
Yeah.
think if they focus mainly on the offense, because what you're dealing with here is a guy who was a first overall pick, who has the talent. We've seen little tiny flashes of it. I don't think his career is completely shot, but if they don't give him help, they don't give him an offensive line or receivers, he's going to be screwed.
Yeah, no, he's going to be screwed for sure. And I don't think unless you can get like a high draft pick, like second round for Miles Sanders, I think your running backs are your least of your worries right now. For me, it would be getting a really, really solid right tackle for Bryce Young, and then also getting him a difference maker at wide receiver. But you don't have that much draft capital. You don't have that much cap space to do it. But what you can do is go ahead. Maybe we can't pay Brian Burns and Frankie Louvu, but Frankie Louvu is a good player. So if you can trade Brian Burns for a first round pick this year from a team who really just needs that extra piece, I say you go for it. See if you can find a team. And then if you can't get a first round pick this year, try and get at least a couple second round picks this year, and then maybe a first round pick down the line there. But I think that's your best piece that you can trade to get some assets back so we can go ahead and fix Bryce Young.